Hello everyone, everyone's favorite multi-platform blendertainer, Master Xeon 1001 here. And in this quick video, I'm just going to go through and just kind of show y'all a quick exercise I do when I'm warming up before I get started in 3D, and that is making little sci-fi knickknacks. It's always good whenever a new version of Blender comes out to just do a little workflow test, just to kind of run it through the paces and see if everything's working the way it's supposed to. So starting off here, the goal was to create a really boring shape, something just simple, and from there use normal maps to make it more interesting. Now, I wasn't overall completely pleased with the final results of this. However, for a quick demo, I think it will definitely suffice. But normal maps and texturing is always something that people always ask for more about. And it's not that I don't do it in the videos that I don't. It's that the robots that I'm doing, I kind of envision them new looking. So it isn't quite time to rust them up yet. So for the most part, all I'm doing is modeling, UV unwrapping. The simpler the shape is, the easier the unwrap will be, obviously. So just kind of keep that in mind. So for this, I just wanted just a bevel planar shape, and then just from there duplicated it, maybe duplicate all of it. That's all of it. And then just delete these two edge loops and shrink it down. Now I think as a result of that particular change right there may have been some differences in the scaling of the UVs according to the final texture, and you'll see that there's kind of a point in the video in which I'm kind of staring at it for a minute. I'm like, wait, that doesn't look right. But you see that for most of this kind of stuff you can almost get away with it for those pesky modelers. But if you ever watch any of my Twitch casts, I'm always looking at the ground and the walls. I'm like, look at this. This thing looks like it's 2048 to you. The people in the game don't know what the heck I'm talking about, but to you guys, I know you know what I'm talking about. You get in Call of Duty, you roll around on the ground for a little bit, and you look at that dirt. You're like, wait, this isn't very realistic looking dirt. So the next thing after modeling is I had this idea that I could poly model the details that I would normally be making in Photoshop. I had the idea that I should just make them in Blender and then take those over to Photoshop and use that as like a 2D template. But it's an idea that I tried at the time, but I also abandoned later on. Like you'll see that instead of baking two and making another map, which would have came out slightly fuzzy, I just decided I just didn't want to deal with that. So instead, I just modeled some shapes on top, turned the background to white, made it show the world background, hide the gimbal, and just took screenshots to use in Photoshop, because for a 2048 map, screen depth should suffice unless there's angles or alias pixels or blurring or something I need to fix in Photoshop. But with this type of workflow, it is always something that I'm always experimenting with. In fact, you might notice as well that whenever I bevel, if you don't apply the scale, that the bevel comes out strangely. This is new behavior, new to the 2.5 era. So definitely keep that in mind. If your bevels are looking weird, you may want to apply your scale. So all I'm doing is just modeling pieces on top, just kind of floating geometry, similar to a method I see other level modelers make. So a couple of pieces here, we'll just make some little like pseudo latches, and to rip the geometry away from it the way I am, I'm just pressing Y to tear, and that'll just separate and put it in the palm of my hand. And just keep inserting planes, just making sure that they're not on top. The only reason any of these pieces should have thickness is so I can bevel the edges and round them out like I am doing. But other than that, pretty much 2D components will suffice for this entire thing. We'll make some little grates in here, maybe flip the normals first. With W, flip normals. We'll just duplicate that out and bevel this final one to make it fit into place. And all I did from here was just duplicate a vert off, take this vert, put a skin modifier on it, and I'm just using that modifier to just generate a cut line that'll I'm just thinking in terms of shapes. So nothing to do with geometry or true thickness or anything like that. Just from the top, does it look like it's a shape? Alright, so continuing on, and I end up duplicating that and placing it lower. Doesn't matter if it's off the canvas or sticking off the shape, because in the end I'm just going to hide it and choose all of this stuff in Photoshop. But this is kind of like the rough idea that I came up with for how I'd like to put the stuff on it. So like I said, I turned the background white and end up using the GLSL render, which the GLSL render is great whenever you bump up the resolution like I did here to 200 and stage my camera, set to orthographic, set the scale, move it around a little bit. Ortho cameras could be a little weird, and there's my image. So aliasing isn't terribly bad. I accidentally had some BS on my clipboard from when I was copying and pasting colors. But now from here is the fun part, and I can go into Photoshop. So if you're not familiar with Indu is made by Quixel, who is another texturing company. Quixel, Indu, 3Do, Ddo are all part of the same suite. However, if you're complaining about the free version, they do have, I think, Legacy Ddo available, which can probably do the same thing. However, I'm so lucky as to have a full license for the 3D suite, so I try to use this as much as I can in honor. Not going to get a license, just let it go to waste just because I'm suddenly into SubstancePainter. And SubstancePainter is great. It's just I'm finding that by doing a little bit of pre-work before going into SubstancePainter, I'm able to have much nicer maps, much cleaner maps, and much more interesting. What kind of words am I using here? Much more interesting, textures by the end of it instead of the previous result. So the first thing I try to do is I try to just place it, just be lazy, like, hey, you know what, this is it, I'm done. But you know what, can't be that lazy. So I just cut things off one by one using a UV as a guide. I realized very quickly that I'm supposed to use white, not black. And from here I can, start playing with the parameters here. In fact, the curve is pretty interesting because you can use the curve to do like bevels and trims and stuff like that on your objects, which I could very easily just be doing the same thing in Substance Designer, except it'd just be a ton of nodes and also slightly less intuitive to explain. Photoshop is, I think, universal language. Everyone should know Photoshop or use Photoshop to some capacity. I mean, as 3D artists, it's probably the finest in texture touch-up software. I keep making this mistake of clicking the button without inverting it. Notice that when I invert it and fill it with white, bam, it behaves properly. And we'll even see the the grill show up over there on the side, which looks pretty cool. To be honest, part of one of my favorite things in 3D is probably seeing these normal maps in action, because you can get so much extra detail going in a specific direction on curved surfaces that would normally be impossible just through the magic of software just like this. So it's not even a question of should I use Ddo, Indu, or Quixel Suite, or SubstancePainter. Just use it all. Use the right tool for the job. If I had to paint this even faster, I would just cut Indu out of the equation. But for this, it's just a quick little warm-up study, to get me started on my day. So, I'm just cutting out shapes, turning them into masks, changing my slants to down, and building this shape up just slowly and surely. So, as I was looking at this, I was like, I don't even know what direction I'm going to take it in. But that's the best part, is you can almost experiment in real time, rotating, hiding layers, scaling, cloning, all that good stuff that you take advantage of as you're using Photoshop. So that's pretty much my perspective on the whole thing. So I'll turn the opacity back up, maybe try to get that cut a little more even. Still not even. I just hate it. Maybe something like that will do. That will probably do. And so we'll click the button, turn it, slant it down, start playing with our parameters, give it like a little trim. Like every time you click on the curve adds like basically like a little additional trim on the inside, like a lip of I imagine it like a lip of plastic, just kind of rimming on the edges to help it be more interesting. So the bottom segments of this don't get much love at all, but I do try to give it a pretty decent start. Now here you can see my scaling in action being inaccurate. I'm looking at it, I'm like, that's not quite adding up. But the alternative is going back into Blender, re-unwrapping it, getting it to be even, and I just don't want to go through that. So these are sort of things that 9 times out of 10 you could probably get away with doing it on this level, just playing around. But it is of course always up to you. But I just wanted to do this as a just kind of a quick demo, just showing just my process. This video is actually sped up about 250 times. In fact, at the end it does come into a little bit of slowness, but nothing that I can't handle. Also, I keep getting messages from Toxic. I don't even have the game on Steam. You better leave me alone. But really, this program is just as easy as it is here. Like I'm just drawing shapes, Shift F5 to fill these selections, hitting the button, adding another selection, hitting the button, and pretty much any image that's black and white you can just bring in here. So in my blends folder, I have hex patterns and stuff like that, and you'll watch me put it on here, and because of my choice of black to white, it didn't give me quite the results I wanted, as far as giving me a lot of bevel room to play with the edges, and that's because I should have inverted it. Also, having it at that scale makes this thing look like it belongs in someone's pocket. I probably need to scale something like that. So I end up just deleting that layer, bringing it in again, and just laying a whole bunch of copies on top of each other, getting it to line up just visually real quick, and you can't even tell where the seams are at this point. So we get that piece in there, and I just make my quick selection with my Q mask, Control Shift I invert, and now we actually have it where it's tapering on the diamonds. I even give it a little bit of a trim, but I think that, in my opinion, looks a lot cooler. And whenever I go into whenever I go into SubstancePainter, that information will definitely be picked up by the particle brushes and result in something a little more interesting happening on these surfaces here. So continuing onward, now this area is quite lonely, so we're going to go ahead and just locate lines. For this, I decided I wanted to rotate it like 45 degrees, 45-ish degrees, make a duplicate, multiply it on top, or screen, combine them, and use this area as the mask to basically give me a grate. So there's not really a whole lot of magic to this process. It's just something that you have to experiment with. Like I said, these are exercises that me and my friends do whenever we're getting warmed up at times, just to just goof off with stuff. So I mean, if you look at my sketchfab or follow me closely, you might see my last couple of posts were like kiosks and just sci-fi equipment, because it's just so much fun to texture. Definitely plan on jumping into organics, but there's no real rush to it, especially when there's so many hard surfaces left to create. So these lines are also my favorite. You just put them in with the lasso, turn it to a stroke, and bam, crispy, crunchy cut lines. And it really is that easy. Another stroke, hide the UV mask, and now we have another cut line in here. And by putting these in, you can get this idea that the whole panel can be disassembled and removed, and parts can be taken to other sectors for repair, or whatever people do with SciPanels. But another interesting tool to play with is the gradient. The gradient, if you make a layer, make it gradient, and do like I'm doing, you see I'm able to create these like kind of accented lips that slide down on the surface, and these also, I think, in my opinion, look real interesting. Like these are all just like little tricks and tips that I've learned just over time using the program. So definitely get in and experiment with it, because pretty much anywhere where you make shapes, whether it's Adobe Illustrator, Blender, or Photoshop, it's just black and white to this thing. So I mean, if you can just use the mask tool, you can start getting some pretty interesting shapes in here, especially when you start stacking them up and layering them and things like that. And also, as you're about to see whenever I go into this next step of the process here. So another cut line. This time we'll shorten it, kind of go down the front a little bit, get rid of this garbage, and voila, you change it to down, and now that's a cut line that's digging in there despite whatever surface is set up there. And so I definitely must admit that I should probably use more normal maps in my life. Like I kind of make things geometrically hard now on the surfaces for whatever reason, just because it keeps me in control, and I don't always see so far ahead to texturing. But that's definitely something I need to probably begin working on, is planning the design from the get-go, so that way I know exactly how much work is in front of me. Because in my particular workflow, work's always changing. It could be anything. So at this point, I'm back into Blender. I'm gonna hide that other stuff, find this line, and go back here and use that selection to put this little piece down. So as soon as I finish this normal map, you'll see that I'll go back over to Blender, kind of render it just a normal map, just to show in process how I set it all up. As far as normal maps go, I received a bunch of comments saying that I should set normal maps to non-color data and it'll get them to behave better. And to my surprise, it definitely did. Definitely was messing up there, rendering them incorrectly. So that's information I want to pass on to you guys. If you plug up normal maps, definitely set the image node to non-color data, so that way it displays properly in the Cycles render engine. Otherwise, you will not like normal maps like I used to, and just refrain from using them and going only with displacement, which is not a bad way to work. But if you're using normal maps wrong, and that's the reason that you're doing it, then that's bad in itself. So I definitely like to thank everyone who commented, giving me that information, because it was something that was making me not want to render so much in Blender. Now, another thing I noticed by the end of this was that after plugging up all 8 of the 4096 maps that I ended up with at the end of creating this thing, the object became rather slow to render despite being just a single panel, and made me worry about how bad things would get if I had, say, 8 panels and they were cloned everywhere, making room, if it would render slower and have all sorts of render issues. But that's something I'm just gonna have to check into and find out whenever I test out these sky portals that have been added to this latest version. So from here, we're almost complete. We'll go ahead and save this out as NT6-NOR. NOR is for normal, U is for UV. Just keeping a fairly sane naming convention makes this a lot easier. And as always, patrons are already going to get the files that were involved with this project. So definitely check your inbox if you're looking for them, if you're one of my patrons. If not, you should probably check out what it's like being a patron, because not only do they get the files from tutorials, they get the files from tests and things that don't become tutorials, like dry runs and test models, as well as unreleased tutorials, things that I'm still working on that haven't even been officially released. So I kind of look at like a pay-per-view version for subscribers, where I'm able to give people who are very supportive of my 3D adventure a little bit more than just what I normally drop on just the random 3D people of the world, which I imagine just scroll through and just keep going or something, I don't know. But continuing onwards, so right here I used the map converter to convert it to a cavity map. Of personally don't like the cavity map that it gives you because it's all gray and mid-gray and black, which probably is proper. However, I want a different one. So underneath this, you could have seen the platform number 9, which was the previous asset I did in preparation of this particular demo. So in Substance Painter, I'm going to go ahead and bring in my ambient occlusion map, go ahead and bake all my maps that don't require anything, just to put those out there. And from here, I want to go into Photoshop and just take certain selections and make my color map. So the original goal was to just go through all of those layers and just do it, but instead I find that it's just easier to just use the magic wand and the lasso to get the selections you want and just fill it with color. This could probably be a little bit more accurate in my opinion. Like I probably could have went in and colored it with care and like done some texturing at this point, put like caution stripes or whatever, but the goal is to just create basically an ID mask. So not even a color texture mask, just an ID mask, something I'm able to take into Substance Painter and use to modulate between material groups. So this is also something that I find to be quite fast when it comes to using Photoshop versus other applications. I mean, I could have just as easily have done this in Substance Painter and just painted a bunch of kind of nasty masks and just use levels to clamp it down to the right levels, which also works good, but this, in my opinion, is a little bit faster. Especially for things like this that, for my particular workflow, are just only like 3 or 4 different colors, like chrome, like chrome, Kevlar, dark plastic, metal, and rubber trim. So now I just clicked on a little lock to albedo just to kind of see it as the albedo map. Even though there's a few little areas in the bottom grate that I probably should clean up, in my opinion, I'm just not going to clean it up because it's, for one, underneath, and for two, they're really small pixels and I'm trying to do this in a linear fashion. So I'll import this, plug it in as the ID, and what's interesting is I'll set my base color, set the reflectance level, put another layer on top, and after setting this up, I'll right click and add a color selector, which will allow me to use the dropper to just make a selection. So this part is really cool in my opinion. It makes this workflow a lot quicker. In fact, before I started using this, I would say that my speed was probably a little bit under half of what it is now. Like, this actually makes it so much quicker and easier to get in and do things. And so you see that I also decided I wanted these front panels to be a different color. So for that, I just create a folder, put a mask, and just paint in just that single area. I'll toggle it off just to see what else I can grab. And that's pretty much all I need there for a good shiny color map here. And more selections, more layers. And so the bright colors I see aren't doing it too good. In fact, the blue is kind of offsetting it a little bit. I can see a little bit of aliasing until I set it up to 2048. Over there on the side, you can set your map size. Sometimes the 1024 just doesn't do the job, but I always export it 4096. And so with that, base is complete. My base maps are here, and I can go ahead and add, my wear, which wear is, something I handle a little bit more roughly in this particular program. Like, I could go through and add multiple PBR materials and then use MG masks to modulate between them, but I find that at times that can be a little tedious compared to just picking up some of these material presets that they already give you, some of the smart materials, and just tweaking them to your liking and painting out their influences, which can also be pretty quick. The good thing about using these procedurals is, as long as you don't keep the same setup for it, like the exact setup that they give you, just put it on and you're done. As long as you're not doing that and you're painting in masks and you're masking it out and doing some sort of variance to make it more unique, then it's a little bit easier to recognize. People won't say that you're, procedurally texturing your stuff. In fact, I really was digging the way that the interaction was going with the bump and the surfacing. So I ended up keeping that one and adding another one as well. Even the cement is one of my favorites. I use the cement usually to break up roughness to a certain extent, just because it has a very noisy, very organic looking roughness to it. So for the finale here, I go in Photoshop and I just make some random labels, just type out labels. It doesn't even matter. Just words. Everyone likes seeing words on stuff. So I put a bunch of words. In fact, you'll watch me press a bunch of keys here, and I accidentally give it strikeout, which caused me to have to learn even more Photoshop shortcuts at the same time. So I ended up going to the top, enabling styles. I didn't want styles. I think I wanted character styles, but I didn't want character styles. What the heck is this thing? I don't want that. I want character. And I look around for a minute, and I discover at the end here that there's a button. You can uncheck for it. So now I'm able to proceed with my life. So after setting that up, I'll just turn off that background layer that I was using just for visibility, and we'll just bring this in. Now the important thing is for images that you bring in, that you set the resolution to be 1024 by 1024, some square resolution. Otherwise it'll come in skewed for what you're about to see me do here, which is use it as a mask for projection. So now, just like Spotlight and ZBrush, just like Spotlight and Blender, just like Spotlight everywhere, I'm able to just put this image where I want and paint in a mask of PBR value. So instead of painting in a layer of just this being white, this is actually painting a mask of a PBR value, which means that afterwards I can change this to whatever color I want, as much height as I want. If I want to suck it in, or leave it sticking out like a sticker, whichever way I want to go about handling it. So I definitely enjoy the stencil tool in Substance Painter because I find it to be an easy tool to use. I think right now there's actually a sale on Substance Painter, so if you're looking at picking it up, then go check that out, or go check out a trial, or go check out an unlimited trial. Just get the program, because painting singular maps on a single channel in any application is crazy talk, unless that application is Photoshop and you're killing it. Then in that case I can understand. But speed is always the key for me. I'm trying to get these ideas out there, before I forget. So this piece in the end ended up being for nothing. It's just another random test, like I was telling y'all. But these are sort of practices that definitely help me get my speed up a lot quicker in applications. So I end up saving this out as like the worst folder name ever. Just send that out. In fact, it even takes a little bit. Like, I'm watching on my other screen, it was like crashing at the same time and freezing. It's like, dang it, I got too many GPU using applications going on at the same time. It's just not healthy. But I persevere anyways. I turn off the filters. I look at it, worn, not worn. And I'm like, I want a not worn one too. That clean map looks clean. So I'm gonna go ahead and export that out too, because patrons get that, And I go into Blender and I render it, and it renders slow as heck, but look at it. That's what we started off with, plus a normal map. So a normal map completely changes the flow of that entire object. Like, imagine if I was just rendering just that boring object by itself. And we have a different talk here. So I've been using a simple PBR material, which basically allows me to plug all my maps in. There I am setting it to non-color data, setting up the normal map, come in here, plug up the albedo. The albedo's dark as heck. But once I start plugging all these maps up, it becomes a much more exciting experience, having everything look so sharp and shiny. Like, everything just it looks so great, in my opinion. Like, it's a big thing for me to have the viewport of Substance Painter in Cycle's render engine, because eventually I want to get it to render faster than it does, hopefully using PBR on things that can take it, versus having to render everything with 800 samples and clean it up with bilinear blur and all that noise. So this pretty much brings us to the end of the video here. However, I believe I'll add the dirty version here next to it at the very end, so that way y'all can see all of them together. But I do, of course, want to thank you all for watching my video, and also, I'll probably be returning back, finishing up a character that I've been working on, or finishing up one of the other things that I've been working on that I got interrupted with that whole toothache situation. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Why is this thing still on? How much longer do I have to talk here? What? One more minute? Alright, fine. So, in final words, definitely brush your teeth and floss, drink milk, also eat veggies. Veggies are good for you, unless you're eating nothing but veggies, in which case you probably need to get to work. But, that'll go ahead and wrap this up. And, for reals this time, thank you for watching.